back, everybody. The Power of Performance is presented by Courtyard by Marriott. Ian Eagle, along with Jason Horowitz. The guy loves talking college football. I think he's got Spencer Tillman on his speed dial on the cell phone. Spencer Tillman from CBS Sports. You see him week in, week out with our man Tim Brando, and he joins us right now here on the program. Spencer, great to talk to you again. It's Ian and Jason. How are you?
How you guys doing? I'm doing fantastic here. It's unseasonably warm in Houston, Texas, 71 degrees. Beautiful outside.
Houston this time of year. It is a beautiful, beautiful town, and tremendous Mexican food, as we know, at Papacitos. Hopefully I'll get a free meal next time I go.
Very nice. Very nice.
They're not a sponsor, I know. Spencer, Troy Smith wins the Heisman. Nobody was shocked by this. At what point this season did it hit you that this was his award?
Well, I think midway through the season when it became clear, and I think Jason alluded to this a minute ago, people tend to refer to him as a running quarterback. He was a year ago, but he's basically challenged himself, and the coaching staff challenged him to flip the script. I mean, he's got great receivers out there to throw the ball to, and it was about managing that offense and not really pulling it down and running with it unless he had to do it. And so I think the great story for him is the transformation. He has morphed into a pocket passer. He was not that over a year ago. So I think that's the incredible story, and I don't think very many athletes can make that transition so prolifically as he did. So I'd say midway through the season, it became apparent to me that he was the great story throughout this college football season.
Spencer, obviously the NFL draft 4 months away, but where do you see him going as far as an NFL quarterback?
Tough call. You know, I think he's a pretty good talent. I think people have to go back and look at his junior year and his sophomore year to see exactly how athletic he is from a running standpoint. He throws a decent ball, manages an offense. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as one of those situations where you got a Charlie Ward who won't get drafted at all. That won't happen. He'll be on somebody's roster, but won't be nearly as high as where most people probably think you would have a Heisman Trophy winner going. So, you know, maybe mid-second round, late first round. Right now, that's what the pro scouts are saying, because I just don't see anybody take him as a pure quarterback right now.
You know, Spencer, you've had a week to kind of reflect on the season and take a look back on what kind of season it was in college football. And what stories popped out for you? Forget about Ohio State for a moment. Forget about the national championship. We're going to have plenty of time to get into that. Were there some stories that captured your attention as this season went on?
Well, you know, I think there's just so much that was going on. I think it was the non-stories, to be honest with you. There's little things like, and I'm guilty of looking at what some people would consider minutia, but I'm looking at the things like, for example, the rule that affected the clock. You know, the game was tended to be sped up by that. 14 plays overall, the game had been expecting some of the offensive records to fall a little bit, or at least players not be able to eclipse some of those standing records. But that was not the case. I think for the first half of the season, you many or half as few 100-yard performances. So from that standpoint, you could track it and directly connect it to the rule change. So I think the factor for me was what really didn't happen. Most people weren't looking at that rule change as a major deal, but I think it was something that will fundamentally affect the game long term. Records will not be broken as easily because you got, on average, 14 fewer plays per game, and I think that's going to be a big issue down the road.
Hey, Spencer, one of the stories that caught my attention this year was Colt Brennan out at Hawaii and how he fell one touchdown pass short of tying David Klingler for most touchdowns ever in the season. So along those lines, he would have passed him if the rules wouldn't have changed?
Probably would have, and I think he might have been even higher consideration for the Heisman if anybody would have been up to see him play. And so that's the big problem when you play out there on the island. Nobody gets a chance to see you. But, you know, June Jones was my offensive coordinator at Houston, my first tour of duty with the Oilers, and it didn't surprise me at all that he had the kind of year that he had, man. He's an unbelievable offensive mind, and those numbers have been consistent with any quarterback that's been back there for the Warriors.
But we tend to focus on the BCS portion of college football because of the culmination of a national championship. But are there some other bowl matchups that are intriguing to you right now?
Oh, fun that you should ask. How about the Gator Bowl matchup, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets and West Virginia Mountaineers, which happens to be on the I Network? I think that's going to be a great one, more so from the standpoint of whether or not Reggie Ball can end his career on an up note. I mean, he has just been horrid, guys. He's the last 2 games of the regular season, just 15 of 51 in the pass department, and I think what makes that problematic is on the other end, you've got Calvin Johnson, who will be the #1 receiver taken in the NFL draft. So for him not to be able to exploit that, to me, is just tragic to watch every single week, at least for half of this season that just was completed. I think the problem for them is, can they exploit, which for West Virginia is a weakness, and that's against the pass. We know about, Slayton and White, of course, they can run the ball, but they can't really defend the pass. But the question is, can Reggie Ball and the Yellow Jackets exploit that weakness? So I think that's going to be a great matchup. And, you got the Auburn Tigers in the Cotton Bowl against Nebraska Cornhuskers. Change there. John Blake, the defensive line coach, just resigned. So a lot of changes there going on.
So, Ian, speaking of changes, let's stay with that state and talk about Alabama. What's the latest there? They're playing in the Independence Bowl against Oklahoma State. Joe Kynes will lead them in the bowl game. What are you hearing about the job at Alabama?
Well, the job, and I can say this, it's going to, I said this like 2 weeks ago to Tim Brando on his show. People need to understand where Alabama is right now. I think more importantly, Alabama needs to understand where they are. Tradition is relevant as long as you're winning. When it becomes irrelevant, you have to understand where you are. Oklahoma University went through a phase when they went through Schnellenberger, they went through Gary Gibbs, they went through John Blake, and then they caught lightning in a bottle with Bob Stoops, but they had to reclaim that lost tradition. Alabama is living in a menagerie right now. They believe the name and the weight of the tradition will carry them through these difficult times, and it simply will not. I was talking to someone just yesterday, the former quarterback at Alabama, and he said, look, when I go speak to kids in youth groups, they don't even know what a houndstooth hat is and a fedora. They don't know anything about Bear Bryant. They don't know. They've lost generations. So they've got to understand that the L in Alabama now means leverage. If you're Rich Rodriguez, you can use that to leverage to get you a $650,000 pay raise.
Yeah, very true.
That's the key. That's where they are right now. They've got to realize that.
Did Miami make a good decision, Spencer?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They made a safe decision. They made a politically sound decision because, number one, guys, they don't have the money for the facilities. They don't have the money to track the marquee coach. And to be honest with you, if I were Rich Rodriguez or any marquee offensive coordinator out there, Joe, there's several of them out that I can think of, but a couple of them in particular passed on that opportunity because they didn't want events outside the white lines to determine their future. You spent years building a resume up to the level of respectability where it is to warrant that attention, and all of a sudden events outside the football lines determine your future. And that's the same thing that happened at Alabama, more or less, for different reasons, but the same thing that happened at Alabama. I mean, you got folks outside the president's and AD's office that determine these coaches' futures. That shouldn't be that way in college sports.
Very true. All right, Spencer Tillman, great as always, the guru of college football knowledge. Spencer, thank you very much. We will get back to you at a later date here on the Power Performances. Thanks a lot, Spencer. All right, Spencer's there. In my mind, on a separate note, the Alabama job should still be Mike Shula's. A guy that took a team last year 10-2 without anything of resemblance of a explosive offensive player and went 10-2 last season. And, okay, they had a down year this year, fine. Should still be there. One year is a different story. And he took them out of probation.
What you learn in big-time sports is it's hard to build equity in that relationship. Unless you win a national championship, your job's going to be on the line. It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs with coaches, and it goes both ways, as we're going to find out later. But I happen to agree. I think Shula deserved to stay on and at least get another year to try to get this program back to where Alabama expects it to be.
All right, Spencer Tillman, great as always. Folks, let's get to the emails. They've been pouring in all day so far. And, of course, you can keep emailing us right here. And 646-CBS-1000 is the number. But this first email comes from Ikuma in New York. Who do you guys think is the best running back of all time? Should LT be considered? I'll let you hop on that first.
Well, I think the general consensus has always been Jim Brown because he combined all of the traits, the power, the speed, the agility, and the fact that his career was ended early because he decided to end it early. The question with Jim Brown for me has always been, what would the numbers have been if Brown continued in the NFL? Should LT be in that conversation? He should. With Barry Sanders, who also belongs there, a different kind of running back, as we know. Emmitt Smith, just because he was able to do it at such a high level over the long haul. Gale Sayers, a guy whose career probably ended early as well because of injury. There are a lot of great names there, Walter Payton as well. LT has gotten himself into the conversation with the season that he's had this year.
The one thing you said about most of those running backs, Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and LaDainian Tomlinson, and obviously I did not see Jim Brown play. I've seen highlights and things, but the one thing about those three guys, they all, when they got in the end zone, acted like they'd been there before.
Yep.
And that's the great thing about football, and that's what makes them great. They're great on the field. They're also great off the field.
Are you alluding to the idea that I did see Jim Brown play?
At the tail end of his career.
No. All right, lacrosse, tremendous lacrosse player, by the way, the best of all time.
That's the best of all time. I mean, that was his first sport at your alma mater, Syracuse. Mine as well. All right, we're going to hit the calls here. Todd from Los Angeles, and on the college football topic about the Heisman Trophy. What's going on, Todd?
Good. How you guys doing?
Hey, what's happening?
Great. Well, I had a question about the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel that Troy Smith was really deserving of it, or do you think he just sort of won by default this year because he was the leader of the best team in the country and there weren't very many dominating candidates?
You know, maybe the passing yardage wasn't what you expect from a Heisman Trophy winner, but look at the key stats. A, wins, as you said, for Ohio State. Touchdown to interception ratio. Tremendous numbers for Troy Smith this year. No, I didn't think this was a year where he won by default by any stretch. I thought Troy Smith was the best college football player in the nation.
Yeah, and it's not the most valuable player like it is in the NFL. It is the best player. The guy who won second, I thought was, I'm glad that Darren McFadden got second and not Brady Quinn, because I thought Darren McFadden had a much better season this year than Brady Quinn, and the reason that Quinn was there, he deservedly so to be in the top 5. But Quinn was all preseason hype. In big games, he didn't come up big, and the one game he did was against Michigan State. It was the fourth quarter, and Michigan State folded. All right, folks, we're going to head back to the emails here. Todd, thank you very much for the call. Don't forget, one more phone caller will get a $50 gift certificate to CBSSportsStore.com. Todd will take one of those home. Folks, we just got word that Maurice Jones-Drew has a team meeting, so he will not be able to join us. We'll try to get him at a later date on another show.
I'll give you one story on Maurice Jones-Drew, meeting with the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier in the season. I don't know if you've seen Drew. He's a little guy.
He's small, 5'7", is what they listed, man.
5'7" listed. We meet with Fred Taylor. They had just come off a victory, and after the game, the wives came out to meet the players, and Maurice Jones-Drew is among the players that are there. And Fred Taylor's wife comes up to him and says, "Whose son is that?" He says, "What's that?" He said, "Who? The guy right there. That's Maurice Jones-Drew. He looks like a teenager."
Yeah.
He looks like he's 14, 15 years old.
He doesn't run like a teenager.
No,
not
far
at
from it.
all. All right, let's talk about Maurice Jones-Drew. One of the emails hits exactly on that point. This one comes from Jackson in Tampa, Florida. And Jackson writes, should Maurice Jones-Drew be Rookie of the Year? You know what? He should be considered for it because he is having one heck of a season. 13 total touchdowns if you include his kickoff return for a touchdown. But I'm not sure his impact has been as large as maybe some of the other guys. Now, we both agree that if Marcus Colston would have stayed healthy, that he would have won it.
He would have won.
Now, Reggie Bush is coming on. Vince Young is 6-4 as a starter, and he's had comeback victories. You've got Devin Hester in Chicago breaking records, and he has had a huge impact, especially when that offense isn't going. What are your thoughts?
I think Devin Hester now has gotten himself into the conversation with his Monday night performance. I think Maurice Jones-Drew will be mentioned. He won't win the award. Truly, I think Reggie Bush is going to win it. I think Bush will win it. The impact that he's had of late. Vince Young is making a run at it. There's no doubt about it. Huge run, and he made a huge run to win the game the other night. I think Bush will win the award.
Especially, you know what? Bush is approaching 100 catches on the season.
Scary.
He's not your typical running back, and we talked about this last week. As a guy that you're not going to line him up in the backfield and just shoot him out there and hand the ball 25 times a game. Doesn't have to be. Well, what for? Get him the ball 100 times through the air. Get him the ball 200 times on the ground in a season, and you've got yourself one heck of a player.
Once he touches the ball, he's a threat to go to the end zone. It's as simple as that.
And we saw it in the Dallas game.
Every week, we really battle behind the scenes to determine who the top performers are here on the program. But there are going to be some that slip through the cracks that can't quite break our top 6, top 7. This week, we've got 4 for you. So the Philadelphia Eagle fans out there watching right now saying, wait a second, why isn't Jeff Garcia getting any love? He's getting a little bit of love here. He's just off the table, and you know what? Credit has to be given. I was there in Philly when Donovan McNabb went down with the leg injury. Garcia came in, really could not move the Eagles. Obviously, he was not prepared to be the starter that week to get the bulk of the snaps, but since then, there have been some quality moments, and look, this is the other thing. We could probably give a co-share there with Andy Reid because Reid is one of the great offensive coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, and Garcia, the key there, he's not turning the ball over. Great matchup this weekend at the Meadowlands against the Giants, and that is going to be huge for the wild card race. All right, This one you may have forgotten about, and for the most part, most people didn't actually see it. The Browns and the Steelers, it was on NFL Network last Thursday night. Willie Parker broke the Steelers' record for most rushing yards in the game, 223. And, you know, for a guy that undrafted, didn't really start in college at North Carolina, was behind when he came on the Steelers, behind Jerome Bettis, behind Drew Staley, who's not even on the Steelers anymore. He's becoming one heck of an NFL running back, and he's 4 yards away with 3 games to go from breaking what he had last year. He's going to have a 1,400 yard season.
It has gone under the radar because the Steelers have been a disappointment, even though they are coming on of late. All right. Every week, boxing. You know, we have boxing every week, but rightfully so. Jermaine Taylor, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in boxing, middleweight champion. Taylor, 26-0-1. The draw came against Winky Wright. Maybe they'll fight again down the road, but Jermaine Taylor gets a mention here on the Power Performances.
We talked about Air Force before. We've talked about mid-major conferences that we shouldn't call mid-major anymore, and this is one of them, the Missouri Valley Conference. Last week I think we talked about Wichita State just off the table because they won at LSU and won at Syracuse. The conference as a whole is a good basketball conference, folks, and they have to be going nuts there in the Midwest. 2 conferences in all of college basketball where every team is above 500, the ACC, the MVC, and that Missouri Valley Conference tournament and conference regular season is going to be tremendous all throughout.
All right, let's move on to one last topic, and a topic that you're not happy about. Let's face it. The Dennis Erickson situation, leaving Idaho, taking the job at Arizona State. Erickson, as we know, has led a nomadic existence as a football coach, not only collegiately, but professionally with Seattle and San Francisco. Take your shot.
Well, my thoughts with Dennis Erickson, ladies and gentlemen, is that his kids are upset at Idaho. 10 months ago, he was hired to be the head coach of the Vandals, a school that, well, let's put it this way, is not very good at football, at least not now. They were when he was the coach there when he started in 1982 through 1985. He won 32 games. They were Division I AA. Left in 1986, fine. Went to take a job at Wyoming. After 1 year, he left Wyoming. Then he went to Washington State. Turned that program around. After 2 years, Washington State, he left for Miami and won a couple of national titles. So my problem isn't necessarily with Dennis Erickson. My problem is with the athletic department. You knew what you were getting when you hired him. You were getting a guy that was going to take a job and go to another job, and that's exactly what he did. Can you actually blame Dennis Erickson for A, quadrupling his salary, and B, going to a Pac-10 school, which is not a bad football school? Arizona State just hasn't, they've underachieved. Can you really blame that guy for it? The one thing I can blame for him, apparently what he said in the meetings when he told his players he was leaving, he had a chance to win a national title at Arizona State. That basically says to the players in Idaho, you guys aren't good enough. That's the one problem I have with Dennis Erickson.
And you know what? That quote bothered me as well because he's not winning a national championship at Arizona State.
No.
It won't happen.
You got to do some recruiting. Maybe do some cheating. Who knows? We'll have to see what he said. We'll have to see what happens with Dennis Erickson.
Wow, this took a turn very quickly, Jason.
Not a fan.
Your bitterness was actually percolating to the surface and then just
I believe
exploded.
He was part of that Miami scandal which got them in for probation.
All right, let's wrap up the show, I think.
All right,
let's wrap up the show now.
Great power performance
before you get yourself in some trouble
Courtyard
here.
by Marriott. Thank you to Spencer Tillman, Maurice Jones-Drew. We understand. He had player meetings. He had team meetings. They got to prepare. They're heading to the, or at least trying to head to the playoffs in the AFC. For Ian Eagle, I'm Jason Horowitz. Every Wednesday live at noon here on CBS Sportsline and always archived at cbssportsline.com/powerperformances. Thanks for watching. Take care.
You look like you should have a pipe.